Hello, this is Max. Three guys went on a journey into the forest and met two beautiful girls there, whom they fell in love with, while also dealing with bandits. Enjoy the show. Don't forget to subscribe. As they watch a home movie depicting the escapades of their childhood quartet, they remember constructing Fort Cooper. After high school graduation, Tom, Dan, and Jerry bid farewell to their friend Billy, who embarks on a new journey. Jerry gives Billy his old compass, just in case.
Thanks, man. You good?
A decade later, their paths have diverged. Tom remains immature, while Jerry works in the corporate world and enjoys surfing. After an argument with his girlfriend Denise on their anniversary, Jerry receives a surprising call from his mother. Meanwhile, Dan is a successful doctor. Jerry informs him of Billy's passing, and they agree to attend the funeral. At the funeral, Tom disrupts the solemn atmosphere with his antics until Jerry brings him over.
Tom!
Afterward, they decide to revisit Fort Cooper, reliving their childhood memories and their fascination with D.B. Cooper, the legendary plane hijacker who parachuted to escape. While exploring, Jerry discovers a time capsule inspired by D.B. Cooper. Inside, they find that Billy had secretly added to it over the years, including a map with instructions on where Cooper might have landed. Jerry insists they follow the treasure map to honor Billy's memory, despite Dan's reservations about responsibilities. They make a blood oath to solidify their commitment and set off for the Oregon Mountains to search for D.B. Cooper's treasure. Their first stop is Cacaldomos, where they plan to stock up on supplies and get her canoe. Sheriff Briggs questions them about their destination, and Jerry provides a fake itinerary. The trio continues their journey, renting a canoe. Tom bluffs about being a certified whitewater guide.
I don't care. I'm not the one that's going to drown.
As they progress, they encounter Grandpa's nose. During the night, they make a fire, share stories, and Tom boasts about his motorcycle business while Jerry expresses his desire to surf.
I'm eating salmon tonight.
Tom attempts to catch salmon with a flashlight, and Dan bets $100,000 in his prized possession on Tom's skills. A bear interrupts their celebration, mistaking Dan for its cub and carrying him to its den.
Help me!
They escape the bear by climbing a tree, spending the night on its branches. The next morning, they are startled by explosions from dynamite fishing by Dennis and Elwood. Dan suggests avoiding them, causing them to miss a crucial fork in their route. Tom tries to navigate with a torn map but leads them into dangerous rapids, resulting in their canoe overturning. Jerry's surfing skills save Dan, but they are swept down a waterfall, destroying the canoe. Tensions rise as they realize Tom's whitewater experience was limited to a water park. Tom blames Dan, who points out that Jerry was responsible for navigation. Dan suggests giving up, while Tom dismisses the idea. Jerry finds a glimmer of hope when they uncover their time capsule, including Billy's compass. However, they realize the compass is useless without the lost map. While attempting to find their way back, they stumble upon an encampment, only to discover it belongs to the rednecks they encountered earlier. Filled with regret, they retreat, but their actions attract attention. While hiding, they accidentally discover a warehouse filled with greens and find out that Dennis and Elwood are in the business of illegally growing greens. As they attempt to slip away, they are detected by dogs, alerting Dennis and Elwood, who open fire. In a frantic escape, they break through the storehouse and dash into the marijuana field. Along the way, they accidentally trigger a trap, setting off flares that light up the night sky. As the flares descend, they ignite the plants, filling the air with intoxicating fumes. Everyone, except Dennis and Elwood, becomes thoroughly stoned. While fleeing and hallucinating an apparition of Billy, the trio stumbles into a marsh. Desperate to evade the rednecks, they hide underwater, using reeds to breathe. However, Dan's reed becomes blocked by a bug, causing him to release bubbles that attract Elwood's attention. Mistaking the bubbles for those of a bullfrog, Dennis dismisses it, and they leave to search for the intruders. With the rising sun, the trio puts more distance between themselves and the rednecks. Back at the farm, Dennis is furious about losing their entire crop. To eliminate witnesses, he convinces Elwood that they must hunt down the intruders. Armed and determined, the two farmers set off after the trio. While Dan tends to Tom's injury, Jerry apologizes for getting everyone involved in the disastrous adventure. He suggests that Tom, who claimed to make a fortune selling motorcycles, should buy them drinks. However, Tom confesses that he's a compulsive liar with a gambling addiction and massive debt. In the midst of opening up about his vulnerabilities and fear of plastic wrap, Dan's phone rings, interrupting their conversation. Startled by the ringing, they follow the sound and come face to face with the bear once more. Meanwhile, the rednecks spot the tracks left by the trio. Elsewhere, Tom climbs a tree, hoping to gain a better view and get their bearings. However, what he sees are forest nymphs bathing in the distance, causing him to believe he's still hallucinating. The trio follows Jerry's sighting and eventually reaches the location where they encounter Flower and Butterfly, two environmentalists living atop a massive redwood tree, dedicated to its preservation. The environmentalists invite them up, offering hospitality and even washing their clothes.
Boy, Mighty Oak could go for some nurturing.
Dan becomes enamored with Flower, while Tom receives a massage from Butterfly. Jerry learns that they use a radio to request supplies but is briefly distracted by Flower's dancing. Jerry asks about the radio, and Butterfly hands it to him using her feet. Jerry radios for assistance, believing they're about to be rescued. Unbeknownst to them, it is Dennis on the other end of the line, disguising his voice. The friends are overjoyed at the prospect of rescue. While waiting, Dan expresses the need to use the bathroom, but he is only given a paper bag and a pine cone for cleaning purposes. Understandably, he decides against using them. Shortly after, they hear people approaching and are alarmed when they discover it's the rednecks, armed with a chainsaw. Jerry devises a plan to sneak down the opposite side of the tree and create a zip line for their escape. However, Tom insists on being the one to execute the plan and bravely slides down the tree, barely dressed. Meanwhile, Butterfly defends their home by throwing their used paper bags at the rednecks. As she hurls their own waste at them, Dan and Jerry make their escape. Before parting ways, Flower gives Dan a farewell kiss. Subsequently, the trio, clad only in their underwear, flees on a stolen ATV. In a desperate attempt to lose their pursuers, they drive off a cliff and into a river. Fortunately, they manage to swim to safety. Frustrated by their harrowing ordeal, Dan reaches his breaking point and contemplates giving up. Tom and Jerry try to convince him to persevere, suggesting that his problems are primarily psychological. However, just as Dan declares that things couldn't possibly get worse, it starts to rain. Concerned about hypothermia, they are forced to huddle together inside a nearby cave for warmth. While attempting to sleep, Jerry reminisces about Flower's dancing, amusing Dan and horrifying Tom. Tom vents his complaints, but their conversation is abruptly interrupted when an armed mountain man suddenly appears. The mountain man instructs them to follow him, leading them to his cabin, where he starts a fire and assures them that he has no intentions of harming unclothed strangers on his mountain. Intrigued by their story and the maps he finds, Jerry assumes that the mountain man is D.B. Cooper and explains their quest to find his treasure. Meanwhile, the rednecks persist in their pursuit and reach the cave where the trio had sought refuge. Inside Dell's cabin, the mountain man, Dell, reveals that he was D.B. Cooper's closest friend. They had planned to rendezvous at Rich for an escape, but a blizzard disrupted their plans. Despite staying on the mountain for 3 decades, Dell never saw his best friend again. Filled with regret over spending his prime years on the mountain, Dell imparts his wisdom to the trio, emphasizing the irreplaceable value of time. He warns them not to squander their time since lost money can be recovered, but lost time cannot. They fall asleep with Dell's wise words in their hearts and wake up to a hearty breakfast. Jerry goes outside to relieve himself and stumbles upon Dan's phone by the trees, luckily without encountering a bear this time. He retrieves the phone and calls Denise, only to receive the heartbreaking news that their relationship is over, as implied by the changed answering machine message. Before he can fully process this loss, the rednecks launch an attack on the cabin. In the face of danger, Dell provides the trio with instructions on how to descend the mountain using an old mining trail. Afterward, he bravely confronts Dennis and Elwood with his 2 pistols. Despite Dell's instructions, the trio becomes lost because the compass malfunctions due to the iron content in the hills. However, Jerry realizes that this situation would also have affected D.B. Cooper during his landing, leading him to believe that Cooper might have ended up in the same area. Just as Jerry shares this insight, they all fall into a hole, where they discover the remains of the infamous hijacker. Examining the scene, Dan concludes that Cooper's legs were likely broken during the landing, and he sought shelter in the hole. Jerry adds that when the blizzard hit and the hole became snowed in, Dell was unable to find him. Unfortunately, they find no treasure, as Cooper had burned the money to stay warm. Despite their failed treasure hunt, Jerry finds a valuable lesson in the experience. He realizes that the true treasure lies in living life to the fullest and using time wisely. After offering their childhood treasures as a tribute, they discover an exit from the hole. Jerry notices a crawl space that only Dan can fit through. While Dan is passing through, he experiences a panic attack, and the friends sing together to support him. Unfortunately, their singing attracts the attention of the rednecks, who follow the sound to the hole. Dennis and Elwood position themselves at the entrance, unaware that Dan is emerging nearby. Unexpectedly, the rednecks join in the singing, alerting Tom and Jerry to their presence.
Can I use this, please?
In a moment of bravery, just as Elwood is about to drop a grenade into the hole, Dan strikes them from behind with a tree branch, causing them to fall. A scuffle ensues below. Dan suggests using the grenade, but everyone unanimously rejects the idea.
Hey, there's a grenade up here! No!
He attempts to handle the guns, but the firepower proves too much for him. Remarkably, the city boys manage to hold their ground against the burly men long enough for the sheriff to arrive. They all climb out of the hole, thinking they're saved, but their relief is short-lived when Briggs reveals that he's the leader of the criminals. As the armed men corner the trio towards the cliff, Dan discreetly retrieves the discarded grenade. He passes the grenade to Jerry, who distracts the sheriff while closing the distance between them. Once he's close enough, Jerry activates the grenade, taking their aggressors by surprise. While Jerry negotiates with the sheriff, Elwood strikes him with his gun, causing the grenade to fall. In a moment of heroism, Jerry throws the grenade towards their attackers, but they narrowly avoid the explosion. Although the grenade doesn't hit its targets, they're ultimately crushed by a tree knocked down in the ensuing blast. After the criminals are apprehended, the trio is hailed as heroes. Amidst the media frenzy, Dell approaches them with a gift. He announces his decision to explore the world and give D.B. Cooper a proper burial. As the friends open the bag, they discover a surprise hidden beneath Cooper's parachute, $100,000 in cash. They believed all the money was burned, but the hijacker had kept Dell's share safe. Tom suggests splitting the money equally among them, but his friends insist on giving it all to him. Dan jokingly claims it as his payment for their fishing bet, but Tom reminds him that the wager also included his prized possession, and he intends to collect his winnings. Sometime later, Denise is in the process of moving when she hears the new answering machine message. To her surprise, it's a romantic message that ends with a marriage proposal from Jerry. Overjoyed, she happily accepts the proposal. At Fort Cooper, Dan has found love with Flower, adopting her remarkable foot dexterity. Meanwhile, Tom is at a Boy Scout retreat. Despite being free from debt, he continues to fabricate stories, narrating an exaggerated version of their adventure. If you are interested in such films, please proceed to the next video on the screen, and also share your thoughts about this film in the comments. Give us a like and subscribe. Goodbye.